What's going on, guys? This is the 5 Yard Pass podcast, bringing you the first of many episodes of our Euro 2021 edition. So for the next 1 month, we'll be talking all things Euro, favorites, surprise packages, top scorers, the big games, and I think we'll start today with the favorite, Sham. So I'm so excited, man. Like, obviously, we had to wait a whole year for this. I was excited to go last year because it was in Europe and I'm in Ireland, but unfortunately, I'll be leaving in a few weeks, so I won't be able to watch any of the games. But look, it's very interesting prospect with the way things have gone. And we'll just start off with, like, how do you think, you were saying before the video, just a little example was Laporte. He would have played for Spain, but now he's playing for France. Sorry, he would have played for France, but now he's playing for Spain.
Yeah, so France have a massively beefed up squad. They got two quality players in every position. There's some people saying the second 11 should be the first 11 for other countries, but Laporte wasn't really getting a game for France. And he's probably struggling a bit at Man City as well with Diaz coming in, but he's got a Basque background, so he's dual national, so he's gone and chosen to go play for Spain, which I think is a good move. I mean, Ramos is there, PK's, not Ramos, but Sergio Ramos and PK getting on a bit, so it's not the worst idea to go and play.
Well, I mean, as far as Ramos is not in the squad, man. Ramos didn't get picked.
He's
so
34, 35 now, so yeah, but there's I guess what I was saying is there's a potential long-term spot there. And that's interesting as well, because he may have played last year. If the tournament was last year, he may have played, and there's probably a few players like that you start thinking, what's happened to them in the last year. They suddenly disappeared from the spotlight, or they come out of nowhere in the last year. And I guess the idea of having this tournament 3 years after the World Cup as opposed to 2, it's created all of those sorts of complications. Luke Shaw, for example, probably wouldn't be in the England squad. And
Phil Foden wouldn't have been.
Yeah, Phil Foden wouldn't have been. So and he could be a real X factor player for England, I think, in this tournament.
Speaking of Phil Foden, if you asked me at the end of last season, I would have put Greenwood in ahead of Foden any day. At the end of last season, but Foden's become this mercurial Gaza type of player. Have you seen his haircut for the Euros?
Yeah,
it's Gaza from 96 Gaza, 92 Gaza. What was it, 96?
96, yeah. With that goal against Scotland,
yeah. Let's go straight into favorites. We'll get into the few favorites. So we have Italy, Belgium, Netherlands, Spain, England, France, Germany, Portugal. They would be the kind of favorites, and I put Croatia in there as well, I guess, in the mix as a kind of a surprise, maybe semi-finalist.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start off with Group A, as kind of alphabetically with the favorites. Italy, man. Italy is, for me, I've always been an Italy fan. I can't support Singapore. They're not going to Euros. They're not going to win the World Cup. But Italy is a surprise outfit. Now, Italy, just very quickly, they've won their last 2 games, friendly fixtures. They beat Czech 4-0. They beat San Marino 7-0. But what they have now, that they have in 10 years, is a good manager, a good system, and very, very good players who may not necessarily be home. We've always talked about Italy used to have these household names. They don't have it anymore, but they have very good players. Do you like Italy, and what do you see Italy doing in this group? They have Switzerland, Wales, and Turkey, which we'll talk about the game on Friday. On the next video, I mean.
Yeah, it's Italy, an interesting one. They didn't make the last World Cup. They were very much in transition. They've got a great axis at the back. They've got the 2 Juventus guys, Chiellini and Bonucci, with Donnarumma behind him. Donnarumma is playing for a contract. He wants a big contract, but there's a lot of teams don't really need a keeper and don't really want to invest in a keeper. So he's playing for his future. It's that Italian stereotype, isn't it, of Italians in a strong defense, culture in midfield, and a bit of punch up front. They really fit that mold. So they've got the spine, the 2 centre backs, Bonucci and Chiellini, and Donnarumma in goals. The midfield 3, they'll play a 4-3-3, like the Man City for Barcelona 4-3-3. But they have 3 very culture midfielders in Verratti, Locatelli, and Jorginho. So one of those guys is in play, and that's a real good sign of depth that they have. And they've got Immobile, they've got Chiesa out wide. They've got to punch Italy. I don't expect them to be a front runner to win the whole thing, but you know with Italy, they tend to start tournaments slowly, and then once you smell knockouts, you do not want to face Italy in a knockout game. They've got an easier group, which will help, but Italy are one of those teams where if they get on a run, they're unstoppable.
Well, I was just going to say they've been on a run. They haven't lost in the last 27 games, I believe it is. Since Mancini took over, he's not lost a game. They've built up very kind of like you said, they built up very solid midfield, which which is what they won the 2006 World Cup on. They didn't necessarily win it on the strikers. Del Piero scored was it Del Piero? It was Del Piero against Germany and Fabio Grosso. It was an examples of them scoring a couple goals here and there. But that Gattuso with playing at the back with excuse me, Bonucci, sorry, Chiellini at the time, Cannavaro,
Materazzi.
and Buffon and Materazzi. That's what won the World Cup for them.
They scored 12 goals in that tournament. 10 different players scored.
There you go. There you go. That I suppose that the tournament was obviously, you remember that tournament for Zidane putting the head through Materazzi.
I remember it really because of how they beat Australia in the round of 16.
Yeah, that's right. Grosso took it. Was it Materazzi took a dive or Grosso took a dive?
Grosso.
It was Grosso. Yeah, it was on the left. Yeah, it was on the left. Was it? Emerson who made that tackle?
Lucas Neal.
Lucas Neal made the tackle. Yeah. So yeah, look, I agree with you. I think Italy. I think it's a bit more of I think I have a bit more faith in them. You do, but that's just me being an Italy fan. We'll move on, man. Let's go on to the next
16s or quarters. I don't see them quite making the semis, but like I said, they go in a gear. They could do anything. Yeah.
Belgium. We've been talking about Belgium for the best part of 6 to 8 years now. This kind of axis of Hazard, Lukaku, Mertens, Courtois at the back, Vincent Company, who's I believe he's left, but that was the kind of time we started talking about Belgium. Where do you see Belgium in this? Just to give a bit of context, they're playing Denmark, Finland, Russia. They're favorites to get out of the group, and then from there, who knows? What do you think?
They should win that group quite easily. It's interesting with them. They've got some players in form. Courtois has been magnificent for Real Madrid, and Lukaku's had his best goal scoring season. I don't think he's top scorer in Serie A, but he led the league champions. He fired them to beat that Juventus stranglehold. So he's done really well. With Belgium, it's kind of that generation's getting on a bit. There's kind of question marks over their durability. Their two probably best technically gifted players in De Bruyne and Hazard have got question marks over fitness coming into the tournament. De Bruyne is really that sort of head injury that they don't think he'll play the group stages, but that might actually be a blessing in disguise. If they get him back for the knockout phases, I do think that they could do absolutely anything. There's a group of players as well. Being a smaller country, a lot of those players have played with each other for a long time. And one thing about international football is that there is constant players coming in and out. But this generation of Belgian players has a togetherness that, in terms of understanding each other and just unity within the team, that I think could help them. They finished third at the last World Cup. I don't quite see them get there. But I think again, that attacking talent that they've got will hold them instead. I've got question marks over their defense, but they have a very good goalkeeper that I think will keep them in games.
I have to say, I think the key player for me is Yuri Tillemans, man. Tillemans is going to be immense for them. Lukaku has had a good season. He's a great player. He's won the league, but actually, there's no buts. I take that back. He's currently, at the rate he's going, he may become the best striker of all time on the international stage. He scored the most goals over 100 games, more than the Ronaldo, more than the Ronaldo now. But I think Yuri Tillemans is going to be immense, playing against people like Kante, Bruno Fernandes. If he comes up against that, he's going to. He's shown he can shut down Bruno Fernandes, for example. Then they lost 3-1 in the FA Cup. So, but I do agree with the assessment.
He got that great goal in the FA Cup final, but he also had a really good season. But that icing is kind of that goal in the FA Cup final everyone remembers. Yeah.
I do agree with the assessment, though, that they're getting on a bit. But I just want to ask you one question before we get on to the next team. Eden Hazard, good tournament, bad tournament, if you had to guess?
I'm going to say bad. I don't think he's quite fit. I think that Zidane is the type of manager that would have played Hazard if he was fit, because Hazard's not that dissimilar a player to Zidane. That Zidane was back in the Zidane was obviously better, but I think he's lacking the match fitness, and he might be lacking the physical fitness as well. There's rumors that he's put on weight in Madrid, which so that whole thing about playing 7 games, 3 days, he hasn't gone through that. That could potentially be in his favor that he's fresh, but I think more likely that he's just not going to be able to handle that and be a difference maker. He could do a serviceable job, but I just don't think he's going to be the difference maker that Belgium will need him to be.
Okay. Um, sorry. Okay. Sorry. It just kind of lagged a bit. Okay. So we'll move on then to Netherlands. Netherlands. Well, since their World Cup, they've been okay. They made the Nations League final, if I'm not wrong, against Portugal. But they're missing a key player, Van Dijk. Um,
Yeah.
but they have a superb player in Memphis. Now let me just give the group stage real quick. They have a tough group, if I'm not wrong. Give me a second there. Ukraine, Austria, Macedonia. No, maybe not as tough as I thought, but I just think they're a team that can trip over themselves the way England has in the past. With such talent that they have, you'd never know. But I'm just looking there. They just had another injury in what's his name,
Yeah.
Donny van de Beek, sorry, who plays really well for country. So overall, they do have a good team. Like I said, for Depay, Wijnaldum, Matthew De Ligt, Danny Blind. Sorry, not Danny Blind. What's his name?
Yeah.
Daley Blind, who's very
Really
cultured.
got
He's
the man
become a
in
very
no place.
yeah, yeah. I knew his dad. I knew his dad to know him. He's become very cultured left foot centre back. The way that Van Gaal wanted him to be, I guess. But for me, I feel what you feel about Italy. I feel about Netherlands. I just don't think there's going to be much about them. I think you'll see them within the second round. They'll be out. What do you think?
Yeah. After they didn't make the 2018 World Cup, and after that they got Coman in. They played absolutely brilliantly. Made the Nations Cup final, qualified for Europe in style. After Coman took the Barcelona job, they got Frank de Boer in, and they have been like this ever since. Like they've been playing
Yeah,
absolutely terribly with the same
yeah.
group of players. I actually expect them to be one of the big disappointments. I think the fact Van Dijk's out, I think the fact Van der Beek's out, that they're difference makers. Van der Beek is it's not had a great season at United, but like you said, plays well for Holland because they all play that sort of pass and move style that Holland plays. So he's playing. Donny needs players playing like him around him. Memphis is a good player. I don't think that he's a thoroughbred striker. I think he's more of a forward than a striker. Um,
Hmm.
he does carry the nation's hopes a bit. Um, they are a team that can get the most out of what they have. I just don't think they have enough to really threaten the tournament. I'm thinking they'll get out of the group and sort of be knocked out in the group,
I mean,
just the group stages.
two names that stick out for me: Ryan Babel, Tim Krul. The fact and Patrick Van Aanholt. The fact that they're in the team still, it just shows an age that a kind of a group of players that this hasn't gone through because they haven't been able to replace these people with. I mean, you haven't been able to replace Ryan Babel. This guy played good games for Liverpool 10, 12 years ago, man. How is
Mm.
he still in the squad? It's a little bit alarming. They do have a very good core of, unfortunately, well, they have a good core of players in their like kind of like mid-20s to their prime. And without Van Dijk, I just don't see much happening for them, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Coman took that job around the time Van Dijk got injured as well, so um,
Yeah.
it was a few weeks away, but it was around the same time. Maybe that's had an impact on them in that regard as well. Uh, it's interesting with Holland that they like when you compare them to other European nations, they only have seven. They have about 20 million people, give or take. I could be wrong on that, but it's about 20. When you look at Germany, Italy, England, Spain, the populations, they do massively overachieve for a nation of their size. But at
Hmm.
the same time, that talent pool is quite small compared to a lot of other countries. So you see players
Yeah.
like Rule and Bubble where you kind of be, oh, they still play, When you said Bubble, I was like, oh, Bubble still exists.
Yeah, and I think that Netherlands as a whole, why they haven't sacked, I don't know why you would appoint De Boer, but he did shockingly at Crystal Palace. But I think Netherlands would be like a Germany or like an Australian Cricket Association situation where they have a massive committee making big decisions, and he kind of takes the day to day stuff, um, which they just don't have the talent that they did when the Wesley Snyders and the Robins were playing. It's just not the same team. Um,
I
and
mean, you might have been a bit young, but that team they had in the late 90s was just absolutely unbelievable.
yeah, that
They
was
had,
my
they
first.
had the Boers, Seidorf Davids, Kluivert,
Dennis Bergkamp,
Dennis Bergkamp,
Edgar Davids,
speaking of Mark Overmars,
Overmars.
Van der Sar.
Yeah,
It was an
it's a great team.
unbelievable team. Yeah. They're not at that level. They're nowhere near that level, frankly.
Oh, we'll get to previous Euro or twice Euro winners and a World Cup winner, Spain, who've become a bit of an Italy again. We'll bring that name up again, but they become a bit of Italy. They bring what I like to see is there's no Real Madrid players in the team for one. Not that I like that, but it goes to show that they're kind of spreading the talent throughout the league now because the league is becoming more competitive. There are many players in that league which produces well. And just to 1 second here, Sean, I'm just getting up the team from the last match. So a very kind of different team, but Busquets still seems to be at the middle of that. Um, but they have Eric Garcia coming in, Jordi Alba on the left, a bit more experience, Morata, the other Torres, Coke, Pedri from Barcelona. Very spread out team. What do you think of Spain? Surprise package, or they'll
The
do what they're supposed to do?
the squads have been made. The squads have been made bigger this tournament. They're normally a 23-man squads.
Yeah,
They've made them 26 because of COVID.
yeah,
Spain have two players with COVID, Busquets and Llorente, the Leeds United Llorente, not the
yeah.
Marcos Llorente, have got COVID. That could impact the team because they're expecting more positive tests. So
Mm,
something like that is just going to absolutely hammer teams because I don't know how it works, but you would expect if Busquets was positive 2 days ago, he's at least out for 2 weeks. You'd think they'd just
yeah,
isolate him. I mean, they're going to maybe they put a treadmill in his room or something. I don't know, but like he's not going to be fit. So that type of thing. If they're getting COVID now, they could be in some quite serious trouble. There's a bit like Italy. There's a lot of very good players in Spain, but we're not talking about genuinely great players, and you need genuinely great players to advance in tournaments like this. Like Morata's a very good player. He's not a great player, you know. Um, Laporte as well is probably a good example of that. And there is a generation of younger players coming through. Like Koeman at Barcelona got some very good sort of 17, 18-year-olds coming through Barcelona, but they're well off the national team at the moment. A couple have played some friendlies, but
hmm
so there is a generation coming. But the current generation is not the Spain that went back to back to back in the major tournaments 10 years ago.
yeah. Um, 1 second here. So we have Spain. So let's just quick. Excuse me. Where do you think they'll end up? Do you see much from them? Would you be surprised if they won?
I'll be very surprised if Spain won. I think for me, there's probably three teams who can win it. They're probably not the teams that we've gone into actually.
Yeah,
I'm
which we'll
thinking,
get to next.
yeah. So I'm thinking France, Germany, and Portugal for me are the three to keep an eye on. Germany,
Yeah,
Germany, an interesting one. They've tried doing the whole transition after that disaster in the World Cup. They lost 2-0 to South Korea and no one blinked an eyelid. Like they were quite poor in that tournament.
mm,
North Korea beat Italy in '66 and got like a whole parade in Pyongyang when
yeah,
that happened, you know.
yeah,
But
yeah,
no one blinked an eye when South Korea beat Germany, and
yeah.
well as well. They've added a bit of leadership again. They've got Muller back in, and they've got Hummels, which I think will add a bit in terms of leadership. They've got all the talent in the world, but you just feel like something's a bit out with them. But I don't know, Germany in tournaments, I just think something's gonna happen with Germany. You never rule Germany out, except when they're
I
playing.
can play.
Here's a
I,
stat. Germany have never beaten Italy in a tournament. Never. Germany
okay.
beats everybody, but they've never beaten Italy. So
Yeah. Well, we'll move on. We'll move on to France then. You wanted to talk about the favorites. This is I call this a computer video game side. I was watching them play last night. They're absolutely incredible. They're 25 players who just like having fun. And with Benzema back in the squad, I was thinking last week could cause a bit of disharmony. He doesn't get along with I don't think he doesn't get along with anyone in particular. But if you had to pick one, it's Giroud. Him and Giroud had that kind of back and forth in the media. But Giroud seems to be scoring. Giroud is 6 goals away from becoming France's all-time top scorer.
wow,
Put some respect on the man's name, man. Put some respect. Champions
very
League,
underrated. Giroud. Yeah.
two Europa Leagues. Probably won't win a Premier League, but yeah. I just want to say really quickly. I said Chelsea was going to win the Premier League season. I meant Champions League. I just want to put it out there before.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I did say they had
Okay.
a strong second half of the season, which they did, yeah, as
You
well.
did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so France have this is the group of death, right? So France, as you're saying with Germany, so France, Germany, Hungary, Portugal. We'll get to Portugal next, but this has to be the favorite. They have to be the favorites. Kante and Pogba, they've never lost together. It's incredible to think they've never lost a game together. Griezmann, I have to go look at the list now. It's just gonna,
And
you know,
Benzema,
yeah,
Giroud,
I'm just gonna throw names out there, man.
Varane.
Griezmann, Langley, Kante, Digne, Mbappe, Dembele, Pavard. It just goes on and on, man. Again, second team could be the first team for many of the favorites, not just for the non-favorites.
I've
Do
heard.
you
I
think
want
they
to
will?
ask you because you just mentioned you saw them play. I've heard that, like, I've not seen a lot of them play, but I hear that when they can look quite turgid at times. They can look like they have to work hard to break down teams. Did you see any of that? Did you think that they were struggling to score? Or did they look quite free flowing?
I think it's a case of like it's a case of mm, they, yeah, they do take they're a little bit playful, a little bit, they lack a little bit of hard work, but when the screw starts turning, it turns. And yeah, there's no like when there's a moment in a game when it starts to happen, you're like, oh, they're going to win. Very much like the Pep's Barca, or maybe Pep's first Man City side. When the screw starts turning, it's
Yeah,
done.
brother.
They beat 3-0. They beat Bulgaria 3-0 last night. They're incredible. Griezmann scored a bicycle kick, which was, I mean, amazing. The guy, I don't like the guy very much. I think he's very much a prima donna, but he's an incredible player. So is that midfield axis of Pogba and himself.
Mbappe, Benzema, Griezmann, Kante, Pogba as their front five. I mean, that's just unbelievable.
That's silly. Now, I have a thought. Like, I think their weakness has to be Hugo Lloris. He's had a very poor season by all standards. He's the captain. Very likely, it's hard to disagree. I think that this is his last tournament. Would that be something you think is a weakness for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the defense will have to cover for him a bit. Varane,
Yeah,
Pavard, those sort of guys will have to cover for him.
yeah,
Um, he's he's never been spectacular. He's always been very steady, but
hmm
reliable, which you want in a goalkeeper. It was not his spectacularness. It was the lack of mistakes and the calm that he brought. He just seems to have lost that. He
yeah.
looks lucky to be playing at the level that he has, and that's harsh. But he is getting on in age as well. I think he's 36, so
Mm,
he's coming out of that. So goalkeeper sort of peaked at 31 or 35. He's sort of coming
yeah.
out of that, and that level has dropped off, almost a hair like. So,
Mm.
which is not where you want to be.
Well, then the next, I was meant to ask you when you talked about Spain just really quickly. De Gea has to go to this tournament. I think. Do you think he gets the chance this tournament? He has to be. I don't see anyone else that I can think off the top of my head.
Yeah, he's historically struggled for Spain. He plays worse for them
Yeah,
than United, and they say that his performances in the 2018 World Cup kind of triggered that decline that he's
yeah.
gone through at United. There were people
He
talking
was
about
never.
him doing well against Roma, but he still conceded 3 goals or something like that, didn't he?
He was
So
never the same after that Ronaldo free kick, the 3-all game. He's
yeah,
just never the same.
it's interesting how one kick can sort of do that. The
Yeah,
Greece team in 2002 faced that Beckham free kick. I think it was September
yeah,
2001.
yeah.
And then they won the next tournament. Like it's sort of molded
Yeah.
them. Funnily
That's
enough,
true.
yeah.
Well,
But
he hasn't played the last 4 or 5 games for Spain, so that's a question. Look, we've gone past Spain, but we'll get into the actual real favorites now, Sean. England. Let's
oh,
talk a little bit about England.
England are going to
Um,
win. Yes.
England going to win. The big story coming out in the last week was Trent, who have whatever the opinion is. Some say he shouldn't have gone to the shouldn't have gone to the Euros. Some say he did, but look, he's not going anymore. It's a big loss for any team. Someone like Trent, he plays multiple positions. He's a fabulous attacking right back. Um, where do you see their weakness being?
Defense. Their attacking talent is unbelievable. Kane, Foden, Grealish, Sancho, Sterling, Rashford. Phew, like some of those guys have to.
Calvert Lewin,
Yeah,
Calvert
Calvin
Lewin.
Mason Mount's had a great season. I rate Calvin Phillips as well. I think he and
Mm-hmm,
Rice provide a good base for the attacking players.
mm-hmm,
Their defense, I mean, Maguire's coming off injury. Stones needs leadership alongside him to play well. Shaw's coming back after a period of time out. I don't think they have a great goalkeeper option. Kyle Walker's good to very good, but he's not great. I think, and if you look at England, there's always this debate about the back four or the back five, and I think it's because Southgate doesn't trust his defense. He's got
mm-hmm.
players in there like Connor Cody, and I like Connor Cody a lot, but he's not played in a back four with Wolves. He's someone I actually rate quite highly, but he's not used to that.
Yeah,
And I think that particularly if you were Southgate and you were worried about losing a defender, Maguire is the one that you would have wanted. He's the one who's shown
yeah,
the most leadership in that
yeah.
United team. I think they're going to suffer with that. I think Calvin Phillips at Leeds drops from that six into between the centre backs. And I think they're going to
Mm-hmm.
have to find every opportunity for him to play that role, which kind of means that Rice has to push on. And Rice is kind of a guy who sits and lets Souček push on for West Ham. So how they get that balance, they can cover the centre backs if Rice and Phillips have a good tournament. But how they cover that and still provide a bit of attacking impetus is going to be very interesting. Maybe they do the old Brazil thing and play the two centre backs with the two defensive midfielders and let the full backs bomb on. It'd be interesting how they get that balance right, or do they just go to a back five, which given they've picked about 10 defenders, including four
Yeah.
right backs, might be the way they go. But you just hope that they don't. I just hope that they actually just have a go and just pick dependable players like Walker and Shaw and try and cover the defense that way with the defensive midfielders. That balance is going to be the key for England.
Well, I was just saying there with I was just going to bring up that same point. Maguire not there. You'd be wondering, can we play that dropping in for the 6? You see, Maguire plays that really well with Matic. He plays that fairly well with Fred
as well. Yeah,
McTominay and Fred, but they're not as good they're nowhere as good as Calvin Phillips in my opinion. Calvin Phillips is a fabulous player. No, so and Maguire already does that well with those two players. He can do it even better with someone like Calvin Phillips, someone like Rice if it has to. But I mean, it has to be said. Are they going to take an approach of what I call the Brendan Rodgers approach, where we're just going to outscore the other team? That might be what they're going to do.
It's probably their best bet, but
that being said, they don't score many goals.
Southgate's not that type of manager.
No, they don't score many goals. They should be.
He knows, and they score a lot from set pieces. They don't score a lot from open play. When you've got some of the best attacking midfield talent in the world, and possibly the world's best finisher at the moment, and Harry Kane is a bit of a worry. I think Henderson not being around in the team, it looks like he'll be there, but there's that question over him. I'd like to see him not necessarily play every minute of every game, but be used specifically in big moments and big situations. I think that could also cover, not necessarily playing centre back, but he can help fix that problem with his experience. And he's a very good leader. And I think that more than anything, that's what England miss at that axis. And Pickett's not known for his leadership either. He's not very well. If you watch a lot of the podcasts of English podcasts, they don't rate him very highly. I think he wouldn't play. He wouldn't play for England if David Seaman was around or any of those other keepers like that. Like, I'll put it that way. He's not quite that level.
Well, England haven't had a good keeper since David Seaman. Honestly, they haven't. They haven't. This is a bit. This may be biased, but I firmly believe there hasn't been a keeper as good as Seaman. And I think Dean Henderson is the next thing. Is the next step to a world-class keeper. Will he play? He could play. He's had a good run for the last 5 months for United. He could play, but we'll see. We'll see.
I think it'd be very risky because Dean Henderson is he's a bit like Manuel Neuer. He's a very aggressive keeper, and that's all fine when you're playing for United. But he makes a mistake and they concede a goal, he'll never play for England again. The press absolutely destroy him. So Southgate's got to make that decision. Do I risk that? Knowing that could go wrong. But I do think he could be the answer, but he's high risk. And Southgate's conservatism, I think, eradicates that. Although I do think that he could do a good job.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to Portugal. Again, one of the favorites now to finish off. It's a big team, man. Felix, Ronaldo, Silva up front, Fernandes sitting behind, and they have and Diego Jota as well, Pedro Neto, a great Ruben Neves, Renato Sanchez. They're all going to play, man. Basically, the Wolves first team. The Wolves first team. So, second favorites. What do you think?
Behind the odds have them about sixth favorite. So
I'm talking for you, Sean. For you.
Yeah, I would have them second. I think that group with Germany in it is an absolute nightmare. Thankfully, 3 teams make it out because I think these 3 teams could make the semi-finals.
Yeah.
Portugal, they're a bit like Holland in that they don't quite have the depth beyond the first 11. But this time around, like Jota will come off the bench. They'll have players like Ruben Neves coming off the bench. Their first 11 is good enough. And Ronaldo will be pissed that he didn't play in 2016. He kind of managed them to win in the final. But I think that this is probably his last tournament to really do something as the man, because Bernardo and Bruno will be the men at the next tournament. So it'll be up to he will have a point to prove. I think they'll rotate him a bit with Jota and Felix. Is it from Madrid? The young fella.
Say that again.
João Felix is the other striker that can play there as well.
From Atletico, yeah, he's actually had a very good season. He's had a very good season.
Yeah, and he knows how to play with Suarez. So, they do play that diamond formation, so they will probably play Felix up front with Ronaldo, maybe Jota off the bench like he does with Liverpool. Bernardo, Bruno, Neves in the midfield, Diaz running the defense. There's a lot to like about Portugal. Like I said, if I was to have a flutter on a team in this tournament, it probably would be Portugal, because I think they're very, compared to the odds, I think are very, they're undersold a bit.
All right, let's finish out this video, Sham. I I want a winner surprise package and maybe top scorer.
Winner, I'm going to go Portugal.
hmm
I'm going to go with Ronaldo. I think Ronaldo's angry. I think Ronaldo will have a point to prove. So I'm going to give him the golden boot.
hmm
I think they'll beat France in the final. I think that'll be a massive game. So repeat of the last final.
hmm
One team to keep a watch out on, and we'll cover it in the next video. I like Turkey. I like Turkey a lot. I'm
Okay.
going to put them as the dark horse.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go England to win. I don't know what it is. I have a feeling England going to win. I think Harry Kane. Yeah, you heard it here first. I think Harry Kane to get top scorer. I think he's a fabulous player. I think it's such a waste. There was no joint PFA Player of the Year because double digits assist and goals. It was ignored. It's unfortunate. Surprise package. I think Croatia. I think I mentioned it before. I think Croatia could be in there. They've always just somehow been in the mix of things, and Luka Modric and company could be a problem for other teams. Lovely. Any closing thoughts, Sean?
No closing thoughts from me. Croatia England will be an interesting game for the first game because that'll be a repeat of the last semi-final. And Turkey Italy as well. I think that those two games we'll cover in our next video. I think that they could go a long way to determining how those teams' tournaments go because the England Croatia game. If you finish second, you meet the winner of Group F, which is that mighty group of death. So I think it's a very important game for those teams.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much for watching, guys. This is the first of many videos of the Euro 2021 series. We had a 5-year pass. My name is Suddy. This is Sham. Keep football simple, and as always,
keep passing, guys. Cheers.